Hi, Dave Dinkel. I'm here with my next 2-minute tip. I have a student in Indiana, and he called me up and he said, here's 3 deals. Talk to me about how to do them. So we talked about option. I'm not going to get into what the other ones were, but one of them was a subject to. Now, subject to is very simple. Back prior to 1980, banks were not concerned about a new buyer coming into a property and just assuming the loan. They had this concept that we're really happy to make interest on a loan. Well, that changed, and somebody came along and said, hey, you dummies, the average homeowner stays in the house less than 5 years. Instead of having these buyers come in and assume the loan, we can fix it so we can make some more money. So what they did is they decided that the new buyers coming in had to get their own loan. They could no longer assume the mortgage payments. The subject to means you assume the mortgage payments but not the liability of the mortgage itself. So what happened? Well, investors came along and said, hey, not a problem. I'll keep making the mortgage payment, and as long as I make the mortgage payment, then mortgage is going to be in effect. So it's not invalidating a note. And in fact, we'll just go forward with rehabbing the property. Now, in some cases, not only did they rehab the property, they rented the property or whatever else. That's called a subject to. Now, hey, we talk about breaking the law. That's contract law in the subject to arena, I'm going to say. And the arena is that the mortgage specifically says if the title is transferred in any way, shape, or form, so to speak, in fact, the mortgage is breached. The option we have to cure this breach is to foreclose. And you have 90 days to pay it off or reapply for the mortgage. Typically, they don't allow you to reapply. They just threaten you with foreclosure. So what are they going to do? They notice that, in fact, the title on the mortgage, they notice, in fact, the title on the property has changed. And they send you a notice and say, we're going to foreclose on you. Well, that doesn't happen very often because as long as you make the payment, no one will really know except your insurance company that's involved with insuring the house. But remember, the banks co-insure on that insurance policy. So whenever there's a change of the insured on a policy, the insurance company notifies whoever it is. And in this case, they're going to be notifying the lender that in fact somebody new is on title. Now, there's all sorts of ways to fix that in terms of using a land trust and various things. The exception to the due on sale clause is the St. Gaudens Act that says basically if it's a financial transaction for estate planning purposes or financial planning purposes, the due on sale clause is invalid. Now remember, I'm not an attorney speaking legalese here. Always check with an attorney or a CPA to see what is happening. But in, 10,000 or more subject to properties takeovers, I've never seen one foreclosed. I'm probably the one that ever came the closest. I did a deal where I did a subject to on the first mortgage, did a seller second with a homeowner. He had a variable rate mortgage, literally monthly. And he called his bank and said, oh, by the way, I sold the property. So what did they do? They quit sending the monthly statement. So what I did, frankly, is I just made a bigger mortgage payment than was due, and they never foreclosed. I was able to rehab the property, sell it, and move on. Now here's the danger in doing subject to. The seller, the guy that's moved out of the house and entrusted you to make his mortgage payment, is still on the mortgage. And the mortgage payment impacts his credit report. So I would say to you that if I was a seller, I would never let somebody do a subject to on my mortgage. If I was the buyer, I'd try and do them anytime you can if you're going to have to rehab the property. The other thing that comes up oftentimes is what if you make the payments late? Well, if you make the payments late, it impacts his credit report. So subject tos are very, very viable ways of taking over a property. Are they illegal? In the context of civil law, breaching a contract, absolutely yes. What's the worst that can happen? They foreclose out the property. So that's my take. I'm sure I've done the 2-minute thing by twice what it should be, but it's worth it to get it across to you about what your risk is, your reward is, so on. Thanks very much.